And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann Report for today. It's Tuesday, March 26, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host. With me is my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann Report, folks. You're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news analysis and information critical in these perilous times. For those new to the program, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can also watch us live on the Christians United Broadcasting Network at Homeland Security US, the number 1.tk. I just want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we take apart the headlines, look at what is being touted as news, what is being pushed upon us as news, as important information. We're walking through a minefield. I say that often, and we are. But we are doing it together, and that's the important thing. Joe, it's great to have you in studio, as all day, actually, in studio.
I wouldn't say all day. We did a lot of other things today. We we had an interesting day. Started around noon, came, picked my dad up, went and got our haircuts as we were going to come back here and start to do some YouTube videos.
We look like twins now. No, I'm just.
We ended up going shopping and bought some things that are we're renovating our studio. We got new desks for each other, and we got things to set up to go split screen video as soon as my father heals from his face surgery tomorrow. So
face surgery.
Tooth surgery.
Well, yeah, I know. Actually, it might be more than one, and as I've been told. So we'll see. I can always show up on film with one of those rags, with they tie on the top of the head, and
yeah,
Anyway,
it's just amazing how many days we plan to do things, and how many. I think 100% of those days we do something different than what we planned, but it's okay.
But I have to tell you this, it's kind of like last night's program. What we set out to talk about, we didn't talk fully about. And it's sobering to me because I just want to let everyone know, remember last night how the last hour started, I believe. We were pretty close to it with a caller who offered a prayer. Wasn't that pretty close to the beginning of the last hour? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But the last hour was pretty spiritually intense. I've got a very good friend, and he had sent me an email. It was right after the show. In fact, 3 minutes after the show ended, I got it. And he said his mother had just passed away, just right after the show started. And the last part of the show ministered to him. The reason I bring this up, now, her death was not unexpected, however. It was not expected at that time or at that moment. But this goes to a lot of times what we talk about. We can prepare, we can plan, we can do a lot of things. But when it comes down to it, what's really important is the spiritual. It's all important. But something last night, at least in my mind and my heart and my soul, moved me at that last hour especially. And for me to get a message like this and for this individual to be able to receive some level of comfort, even if it was just a prayer or knowing that there was prayer. The direction of the show, that last hour, was somewhat inconsistent with the direction of the show for the first 2 hours. But it was needed. And I think God works in tremendous ways. And, I've never claimed to be a minister or, I don't know, I certainly can't pray like a lot of people, for example, Steve Quill, to hear him pray, or others. I can only do what I can do. And I'm certainly not a scriptural encyclopedia. But something about that last hour of the show last night really hit me. And then when I got this email, I was just stunned. I was stunned. And all I want to just say is, today, we're here today. There's no promise for us for tomorrow. It doesn't matter. We could wake up tomorrow and everything could be changed. So that's why the spiritual aspect of this show is so important. And that's why I appreciate my son Joe, because he puts in a tremendous spiritual component into the show. And I know there's people out there saying, "Wow, I'm not tuning in to hear this." Maybe to those people who say that, maybe that's the very reason why you should. But I'm not one to say that, because I don't know. But folks, if you could just please say a prayer for my friend. I'll just give you his first name, Wayne. He's a good guy. Pray for his strength. Pray that he and his family are able to just, handle the death of a loved one. And it's never easy. Just pray for him, please. When you hit your knees tonight, pray for him. Pray for the wisdom to guide him in whatever decisions he's got to make. Pray for his comfort.
Yeah.
And that's all I got to say. But I think last night's show, again, we just don't know what's going to happen. We could walk out, and believe me, I'd be the first one to walk out in front of a bus. Okay, I could walk off the stoop, and who knows, So it's just important. It's just very important, regardless of what we see around us. We see the world crumbling down.
We see the world crumbling down, or what appears to be the world crumbling down. We planned yesterday to do a certain show and have certain topics covered, and we went in a different direction. And that different direction, from the email we read last night after the show, you and me, it was not our doing, but it served a very important purpose.
Yeah, and I think that there are people out there that sometimes we don't, as you say, we don't plan to do something and it just happens that way. Sometimes I believe we're being used in a certain fashion by God, and I hope that we can continue to be open and that's my prayer, that we are able to be responsive in that respect. And I'm trying to be very, not falsely humble, but just, kind of, folks, you know what I mean. I don't have to get into it. But just take a moment today while you can, or tomorrow, or as soon as you can, and just tell your wife or your husband how much you love them and how much you care about them. And, it doesn't matter. They don't have to be sick. They don't have to be old. They don't have to be, just do it, because, and we're all part of a larger family, are we not? Each listener, I look at every listener of ours as being part of our extended family. Just know that we care and we pray for our listeners as well. We don't know your names. We don't know where you are. We have listeners all over the world. Your prayer, you are in our prayers for your safety, for your salvation. that you make the right decisions, that you're protected, that you, if you have, whatever your situation, whatever your station in life, we pray that you're protected and your situation improves if it's bad or continues if it's good, and so on and so forth. So just know that we care for you as listeners, and we appreciate very much. We appreciate your listener, you being listeners, and we read all of the letters and emails. We don't do it on air because, we just don't do that. But every one of the letters, whether it's written on the back of a receipt, whether it's written in pencil, whether it's written in pen, whether it's typed, whether it's a card, whether it's written on the back of a $20 bill, hint, I'm just kidding. We read them all. And God bless every one of you for your thoughts and sharing that. I have one more announcement to make before we get into the show. We have a jam-packed show tonight with news, folks. One more announcement to make. I was talking to Steve Quayle earlier today, and remember, Joe, about the guitar he was going to auction off, the solo tickets, the Stephanie Quayle's guitar.
Yeah, he talked about that when he was on last time.
Okay, I just want to. He asked me to make an announcement. The venue, he felt the venue was a little bit off because he wasn't getting the response. I think he only sold like 10 tickets, and a portion of the proceeds were going to be used to for the veterans. Okay, what he's going to do is he's going to sell it. He's going to close down he's not going to take any more ticket sales. So don't buy any tickets. Those of you, I think, like I said, maybe 10 people purchased tickets to win this guitar. He's going to be sending them the money back to the people forthwith. Okay. But he just said, the response wasn't that great, and it just didn't feel right. So he's just gonna sell it via other means. No big deal, but he just wanted to make sure that everyone, if you're one of the 10, or if you're 10 or listening, the money will be refunded to you. But I just want to make that announcement. You were talking earlier today, and he asked me to do it, so I figured I should do that right away before that escaped us. Now, that said, Joe, we've got a lot of news.
Yeah.
And let's get into this. Go ahead and... all
right, let's start
away.
Let's start with Cyprus. What's going on in Cyprus? Here is a news clip on...
Students are now taking to the streets of the Cypriot capital, Nicosia, protesting against the last-ditch bailout deal that was sealed on Monday. Reports say a couple of smoke bombs went off as the crowd chanted against the Troika. Cypriots have been anxiously waiting for banks to reopen on Tuesday, but their doors remain closed. All banks on the island will stay shut until Thursday. Even then, capital flows will be temporarily restricted. The last-ditch bailout deal may be hailed as a relief by the government and the EU, but it's certainly no comfort for people struggling to get their money. Marty's Tessa Arcilia has this report from Nicosia.
Now, this Laiki Bank is that ailing bank at the heart of that deal that Cyprus sealed with its international creditors to get the 10 billion euro bailout it needs. Now, what will happen to this bank essentially is it will be split into pieces, and people with deposits of more than 100,000 euros that are uninsured will have to take a huge haircut, a loss to whatever money they have here. Now, many Cypriots for the past week have been on an emotional roller coaster, wondering what is going to happen to their money, to their savings, as they look to this example. One day it was here, the next day it isn't, and they're wondering, is the same thing going to happen to their jobs, to their savings, and to everything else they think they have? Precisely what Dimitris Antonio, a manager for the country's biggest bank, the Bank of Cyprus, has been thinking all through this roller coaster week.
For the first time in my life, for 30 years, I worried. And the last week, and especially the last 2 days, I worried a lot. It was like that I was going to wake up and just to listen the news that I don't have a job anymore. And I'm 50, I'm not 20. To start my life and say, okay.
The Bank of Cyprus, according to the deal, will function as the good bank and will take all deposits of less than 100,000 euros from Laiki. It will, however, also absorb the debt. 9 billion euros in loans, which Laiki received from the European Central Bank as emergency funding assistance. A detail that angers Dimitris.
What is this? It's like that they want to push also Bank of Cyprus after a few months to collapse. And I wonder, what is this? Is not fair.
And while this employee worries about the health of his bank, other Cypriots worry about when their bank will reopen, if at all.
We have no cash. We are just queues behind the ATM machines waiting to get some cash. For how long?
And while this Eurogroup approved deal may have staved off a complete banking meltdown, for many Cypriots, their feeling towards Europe is one of frustration.
It's better to go back to the pound. By the time we get to the European, it was a disaster for us. It wasn't, isn't it? A disaster. Better before, with the pound, peace and quiet.
It was January 2008 when we entered Euro. All over Cyprus was upside down. So slowly we have arrived to this kind of situation. So now we are in such a bad situation. We have to wait, but to recover, it's going to take so long.
And for now, Cypriots are forced to wait for banks to reopen, for cash to start flowing, and for jobs and life savings to be secure again. RT, Nicosia, Cyprus.
And amid all the angst and frustration here at RT, this news just in. We're getting reports that tell us that the head of the Bank of Cyprus has resigned. Well, earlier, the president of Cyprus defending the controversial rescue package, admitting, though, that it's painful, it is in the best interests of Cypriots. Meanwhile, the Troika hailed the plan, saying it places the country on a sustainable path to recovery. But of course, the deposit levy has raised fears the same thing could be done in other struggling banks across the continent. Let's have a look now and see what the head of the Eurogroup is saying regarding all of this. Ultimately, that if indeed there is a risk in a bank, our first question should be, well, okay, what are you and the bank going to do about it? Well, of course, this prompted fears across the Eurozone as the Cyprus deal has now created a new template for resolving future banking problems.
And that is out of Cyprus. Now, what we have learned is that the Cyprus bailout has been accepted. Savers, or people using the bank, will be rated, their accounts rated to save the euro in future crises, says Eurozone chief. Savings accounts in Spain, Italy, and other European countries will be rated if needed to preserve Europe's single currency by propping up failing banks, a senior Eurozone official announced. The new policy will alarm hundreds of thousands of British expatriates who live and have transferred their savings proceeds from house sales and other assets to Eurozone bank accounts in countries such as France, Spain, and Italy. The euro fell on global markets after Jeroen Dijsselbloem, the Dutch chairman of the Eurozone, told Financial Times and Reuters the heavy losses inflicted on depositors in Cyprus would be the template for future banking crises across Europe. If there is a risk in a bank, our first question should be, okay, what are you in the bank going to do about that? What can you do to recapitalize yourself? If the bank can't do it, then we'll talk to the shareholders and bondholders. We'll ask them to contribute in recapitalizing the bank, if necessary, the uninsured deposit holders.
And don't forget, too, what's going on with the Cypriots, with those people of Cyprus. They're limited to go to the ATM. They can get about $100 or £100, which is about, $129, $130 out per day. So think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Think about how that will affect you when this happens in the United States. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You see, this is part of a larger plan, larger move, obviously. This is the Illuminati, this is the global elite, the international banker cabal at work. And as you said, Joe, and as you read, this is going to be the template, including the template in the Western world. And we talked about last Friday's show with V and Steve Quayle. What was said? Well, it was the Cyprus situation, then Japan, then the euro, and us. And that could happen, overnight. literally overnight. Now, one thing I noticed, and I think that it's important, folks, you hear, and I'm sure you've heard, unless you haven't looked at the news, the Dow hit another high today, or record high today. This is from the influx of cash, dollars, influx of money coming into the United States. This is to be expected. Does this mean that our economy is getting better? Of course not. All it means is the money is coming from the Eurozone, from other areas into the United States. They're buying dollars, they're buying American notes. Again, this is expected. If you understand the severity of the crisis, this was in fact, I believe it was detailed by Steve and V and others. In fact, you can find this, whether it be Gerald Celente or others, talking about why the Dow is reaching new heights. This is a sign. This is not a good sign. But it's a good time if you've got the ability. Did I just lose somebody? Or okay, if you have the ability, of course, to buy silver, buy precious metals, then now would be the time to do it because of the artificially low prices. And you would be buying them as a preservation of wealth. Now, I don't sell gold. I don't sell anything like that. So we don't do that. But I'm just saying, we're just saying from our point of view, as a matter of preservation of wealth, it'd be a good time to do it. But go ahead.
I sell paper gold all over eBay. You didn't do that?
Yeah, that would be a fun. I'll tell you. But see. Just understand when people say, well, how could things be bad because the Dow is so high? Understand why it's high. That's all. It's just a matter of them fleeing to the dollar. And as we said, everyone is going to flee to the dollar. Picture the dollar as like a lifeboat, like this huge lifeboat. And everyone's in this lifeboat, and they push it out to sea and they sink it. That's what's going to happen.
Let me play this audio here on what is going on with the dollar. There is a new agreement between China and Brazil, which is going to move up to $30 billion a year of trade exchanges out of the U.S. dollar zone. This is the BRICS deal. I don't know how many of you guys heard about this. World's wealthiest block in 30 years. Here it is.
The world's giant emerging economies are gathering in South Africa, looking to reshape their BRICS organization. Leaders of Brazil, Russia, China, India, and of course the host nation are all at the summit. With Egypt's President Morsi, he's set to attend. He's hoping to join the bloc in the not-too-distant future. Reporting now, RT's Alexei Rashevsky, reporting ultimately on the expectations for strengthening the group.
Since its inception in 2009, many have been wondering what BRICS is all about, a symbol of growing global multipolarity or a counterweight to the EU and NATO. The leaders of the member states have been cautiously downplaying its role, saying this alliance is purely economic and exists mostly on verbal agreements. Officially, it's not even a legally bound international organization. The BRICS leaders are only now contemplating setting up headquarters in one of the capitals. But just look at every BRICS country separately. Russia, the world's largest minerals exporter. China, the world's second largest economy and the source of a cheap labor force. India, cheap intellectual resources. Brazil, with its enormously powerful agricultural sector. And the Republic of South Africa, the continent's leader in natural resources. Put the country's economic stats together, the numbers are nothing short of impressive. Last year, the BRICS countries averaged a 4% GDP growth, whilst the G7 countries came up with only 0.7%. And their collective gross national product already exceeds 27% of the global output. And this economic might of the Group of Five could diversify into a joint BRICS development bank. This idea appeared during last year's summit in New Delhi, and there are certain indications this year's meeting in Durban could pave way to its creation. Should this prove to be the case, the world may see a new, powerful financial institution.
We are now on the verge of a formal decision. It would be a substantial, in terms of capital and paid capital, a substantial new international institutions. This development bank is probably one of the major deliverables. Having BRICS more and more prominent in the area of economy, international finance, the development of infrastructure.
The common standpoint among the BRICS states on major international issues could also be a huge factor in global geopolitics. The war in Syria is just one of the examples. The Group of Five has been insisting on a peaceful solution to the conflict, and with Moscow and Beijing firmly standing within the UN Security Council against any military intervention. No wonder experts say Bashar Assad recently asked the Group of Five to help bring the conflict to an end. Many experts believe that despite BRICS being an informal group, its geopolitical weight is already very high.
As for political role of BRICS, it's quite huge. Actually, now the major international institution which present the whole humankind in solving economic problems, for example, is G20. I think at this point, the decisions of G20 are predetermined by the position of BRICS.
So BRICS has yet to become an officially established organization, but the Russian president already said cooperation within this bloc will be Moscow's top foreign priority this year. And considering that at least 5 countries, including Mexico, Indonesia and Egypt, are willing to join, the world may soon see a powerful alliance of developing economies, which experts say, even in its current configuration, may become the world's wealthiest union of states in 30 years.
All right, folks, what we're seeing is an orchestrated collapse. Here is the important part that everyone really has to understand. I believe this is after both Joe and I have done extensive research on this. While we were putting together some things in the studio today, we were listening to certain lectures, and we were, we would take breaks and, of course, look into certain things. And, of course, last night we did a lot of research during the night. We were looking at the different markets, but the bottom line is this. What is happening right now is part of a grand strategy. Of course, what is that strategy? As we always talk about, it's to create a single one-world state, one-world government. And you've heard us talk about this ad nauseum, perhaps, but it's important to really comprehend how this is going to play out, at least from the economic standpoint. Of course, they're going for this one world state or one world, New World Order, whatever you want to call it, with a single global governance, with a world army, with a world bank, with the world currency, the world religion, and so on and so forth. And of course, they want to vastly reduce the population. But money as we know it now, and understand this, will soon be a thing of the past. The folding money, the change you've got in your pocket, it's going to be a thing of the past, because with that money, with national currency, there is no absolute control or centralization. This is what they're going after. And it's going to be touted as a progressive move, or progress, I should say. It's going to be sold to us as progress. It's going to be to your advantage, because, see, the problem, well, the global currency is going to be the solution to the problem. But what they don't want you to know is they created this problem. What you just heard is sort of a death blow, if you will, against the dollar. The dollar right now is the world's reserve currency. That's what gives it its remaining value. Now, understanding that, of course, is important. So all of these different machinations you see with these nations and trading on different levels with different means and so on and so forth, what is taking place, ladies and gentlemen, is a move to away from the dollar, the U.S. dollar, as the world reserve currency. It's the economic aspect and the goal of the Illuminati to create a single global currency. So to effect this, it's necessary. It has to. The Illuminati, the global elite, have to degrade, debase, and devalue each and every independent national currency. The introduction, for example, of the euro was a stepping stone toward this. The current economic woes that are being felt in Cyprus and in Spain and in Greece, they're all part of this. The euro, folks, it was never intended as an end in and of itself. You must understand that. The euro was never intended, because people look at the euro and say, well, this is no. It wasn't part of any attempt at this global currency. It was only an increment to the final solution.
Well, then, it was in part an attempt. It was a step in that direction. It was done.
It was
intending
done,
to lead to a bigger currency, more taking in more countries.
Right. Okay. I suppose I will stipulate to that. But the euro itself was certainly not an end in and of itself. It was only an increment toward the final solution to this Luciferian Illuminati goal of world domination and the single currency system. But you know, there is this huge stumbling block before any kind of global takeover can be realized. You've got to understand that the United States dollar is, well, for the past 30 or so years, being the independent symbol of the land of the free and home of the brave. I mean, it's been under relentless and constant attack. You know, the dollar has died. No one has attended the funeral for the dollar. It's unfortunate, but few even realize that the dollar passed away. Now, there are people who will cling desperately to the hope that it's coming back, that there's going to be a recovery. People are even talking like there's a recovery, but there is no recovery. In truth, the chances of any recovery are non-existent. The dollar is dead. In fact, the dollar is a victim of murder. And who murdered the dollar? The global bankers, the people such as Ben Bernanke and Geithner, and the people before him and them in their various positions in the Treasury, in the Fed, in our government. You could take it from Carter forward. You could take it from Nixon, actually, forward. You could take it, actually go back to 1913, if you want to be a purist about it. Speculators, investors, the average person on the street were astonished a couple of years ago when gold actually broke the $1,000 mark. They said it could never happen. Well, it's going forward. It will go forward. What you're seeing now, again, is a very manipulated price. But the Illuminati, the schemers, the planners, the plotters, all throughout our government. And we let these people in. We opened the door for these people back in the 1950s, especially. We can go back to 1913 and of course before that and after that, but in modern times, if you want to consider the 50s modern times, for example, when Senator Joe McCarthy was talking about the communist infiltration in the State Department, it was all areas of the government, including the Treasury and the Executive Office and so on. This set the stage for the current or the most recent work. You know, I mean, without going back into the early 20th century, this was really when things became, I'll use Art Bell's word, the quickening. This is when the quickening began. The second blow, by the way, or a blow, a significant blow, and people really haven't caught or really don't understand this or really aren't looking at this. The conspiratorial versions, the conspiratorial plots and machinations of the Illuminati. August 1982, the IMF was about to begin its annual meeting in Toronto, well, in Mexico, or that month, Mexico, Brazil, and a host of other nations, deeply indebted to the U.S., said, hey, you know what, we can't pay. Mexico alone at that time in August of 1982 owed $64 billion. Well, the total sum of all the countries was close to $100 billion. At that point, when there was a default, it was just a matter of time. The dollar, that was one significant event. No one should be surprised about what's taking place because we've had plenty of run-ups to this. The financial system of the free world is really on the verge of a major catastrophe. Now, I want to go back to the summer of '83 because at that time that it almost collapsed, and the U.S. government, in fact, the U.S. government printing office was at the ready to print new money in case it did. The dollar, of course, like other major currencies, is not held up by gold or by silver, but just by the faith, erroneous and misplaced as it is, in the government and the faith by the people. And this is what makes it currently acceptable for trade and for commerce among people all across the world. But when all it would take right now and we're seeing this, we're seeing the collapse of the world's financial system. We're seeing the debasement of all independent national currencies. And once the currencies are fully debased, the sovereignty of each country is gone. And folks really, you've got to understand that. And what V said too, there's a difference between wealth and currency. Understand that. You want to talk about a conspiracy? There is a conspiracy to subvert America and create a one world order. We're seeing it play out right now. No one is talking about it. No one's seeing the bigger picture. Everyone's eyes are on the symptoms. Yes, we're seeing VHS movements. We're seeing VHS purchases. Yes, we're seeing this gun grab. But what's the root of all of this? It's the lie. It's the situation right now that we're seeing. It's the globalist. We're seeing globalist plans play out right before our eyes. So that's just please understand. We've seen this happen back in early 20th century. It began with the creation of the Federal Reserve, and all throughout history. Don't forget August 15th, 1971, taking us off the gold standard. You go up to the creation or the Dodd-Frank Act or the repealing of the Glass-Steagall Act. Remember when Clinton was laughing, and by the way, it's not a Republican or Democrat issue. It is a single-party issue. We don't have a Republican and Democratic Party anymore. Those people who push that are pushing a false narrative. They're pushing a false scenario. It is a one-party system. It's all progressive. It's all communist. It's all one world order. Communism, socialism is a stepping stone to communism. Communism is the instrument that's going to usher in the one world order. Please understand the Bible prophesies this, our global situation, and we are watching it play out right now. In fact, you can turn to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 to 5. That explains, for example, the critical times about money. Men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, self-consuming, and so on and so forth. It kind of creates this, it precisely provides this scenario of where we find ourselves today. And understand, finally, this, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. The globalists created the problem by debasing the currency. The reaction, you're seeing it play out. The solution is the one world currency. The one world currency is going to then cement together all the other components of this one world order, in which we will get the 10 trade zones, and think back to the Bible, and think back of Nebuchadnezzar, his dream.
Yeah, the final goal is the microchip, is total control of every person through a microchip, and that is what they plan to do, and they plan on implementing it. And I will prove to you and show you their plans I'm still putting it together. Didn't have a lot of time to work on it today, but found new things. This I found interesting. U.S. Army chaplain. DHS preparing for war on Americans. Must be disarmed. The following is the United States Army chaplain Terry Hestillo, retired. Full letter to his Texas Senator John Cornyn regarding the Department of Homeland Security's arms race, especially since they have no authority to wage war on America or anywhere else. He posted the letter on Facebook. Says DHS must surrender their weapons immediately to the Department of Defense.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, folks. For those who did not tune in yesterday, we did talk about this yesterday. Joe, we went through this last night, late after the show, and early this morning. I don't believe that we are going to get any straight answers because we cannot have any type of honest discussion about what's really taking place. They are buying time. Napolitano, by not answering, by delaying, by saying, we're going to look into it. They're buying time. And I happen to see this, too. In case you were, I'm not sure if you caught this, over the weekend, the Fox News came out and said they were looking into the ammunition purchases. Well, it was interesting because I can't remember who the person was, who the anchor person was. It was a young lady who was talking. She said that in 2012, during that year, the DHS purchased 148 million rounds, million with an M, rounds of ammunition. In 2013, this year, they had a 5-year contract for 1.6 billion rounds. Now, folks, those numbers differ greatly depending upon the source. In the meantime, Charles Krauthammer, who was part of a roundtable discussion. Now, Charles Krauthammer is supposed to be a conservative. In fact, I had listened to him, and I had a great deal of respect for Charles Krauthammer until he stated or described to people like us who are looking into this and saying, there's something wrong here because there's something wrong. We're not getting the truth. Well, Charles Krauthammer this weekend came out and said, or referred to people like us as cave dwellers. Basically, people that live in their mother's basements and ascribe to conspiracy theories. Because he said, actually, the ammunition purchases are not anything out of the ordinary. In fact, they're decreasing because in 2010, DHS ordered 148 million rounds. In 2011, 108 million rounds, which is 40 million less in 1 year. And then in 2012, 103 million rounds. Basically, what he was saying is the DHS is essentially decreasing their purchases. So who's right? What figures are correct? And then, of course, you have Alex+Jones out there, and God bless him because he has a lot of information talking with other people. But there's so many different numbers being thrown out there, and you understand they're 5-year contracts. In fact, the Fox report equated the purchases as saying, well, it'd be like going to Sam's Club or Costco or one of the big box stores and buying more toilet paper or paper towels than you need. And why? Because you get a better price or better cost. It costs less, obviously, when you buy in quantity. Well, that might be true, but how does one explain, then, the ammunition shortage that is taking place? If you go down different possible paths to explain this, the only path that you could go down with respect to this particular aspect, the Krauthammer theory, we'll call it, is that the manufacturers of the ammunition are actually raping the consumers. It's supply and demand. And I've seen some YouTubes about that as well. Is that what's taking place? Well, closer scrutiny tells me no. And I think that we have enough anecdotal evidence, enough evidence at the periphery of this issue to understand that the DHS is, in fact, the federal government, this regime is, in fact, preparing for a war. And, folks, it's going to be on our soil, and it's going to be against the people who are political dissidents and ideological dissidents.
I have some information on that. A PDF released by the Department of Defense on the 18th of March, Realistic Military Training off of federal real property, talks about the military defense and other Department of Defense forces and special operations forces training in the United States or its territories off of federal property. It goes on to say aviation forces will be operating in conjunction with ground forces off of federal property, even if they are operating in accordance with federal aviation regulations. It goes on to say training at private, commercial, state, or local facilities that have been developed, established, or operated for the purpose of training, such as that which will occur during the proposed training event. Individual education or training activities at non-Department of Defense institutions, including field activities, National Guard activities, drone drills and operations in accordance with reference D, the pilot or controller of the UAS off of federal property but independent of other ground maneuver or targeting activities. And it goes on. Training in the ocean. Training in the U.S. In its territory.
Not only training in the ocean, but training on, above, or under the ocean. That is to say, this is the Department of Defense. This is the military, United States military, conducting training on American soil. And that file, that memorandum, is operable for the next 10 years.
Yeah. And I just started reading this, so I haven't gotten too far into it. As I have, literally, if I were to stack up the PDFs I were researching on my desk, it would reach to the ceiling. And
it would be as big as a healthcare bill.
This is just another one that I need to go through. And but yeah, I mean, they are not slowing down, whatever the reason being, whether gauging public awareness and response, whether gauging their own response, what is going on. But this is serving a purpose that is bigger than what we know, because what they are doing here is training for real-life scenarios that they envision happening, that they see themselves deploying on U.S. soil. Not just U.S. services or servicemen, international servicemen as well.
Exactly. And, I want to, at this point, I want to mention the Jim Carrey spoof. I really I want to avoid doing this, but folks, I don't know if you've seen this Jim Carrey 5-minute adaptation or satirical twisting of Hee Haw. Remember that country western show back about 20, 30 years ago. But I watched the spoof in its entirety. I looked at it, and one thing that people are not talking about, or at least I haven't seen anyone talk about. Obviously, they're upset at Jim Carrey. They're saying he's, just all the obvious. For example, I mean, they're criticizing him for what's obvious. But let me set the stage very briefly for you. You've got the opening of this satirical look, or satirical musical, as the opening of the old Hee Haw television program. You've got Jim Carrey appearing as Charlton Heston next to the host of the program, or the primary anchor of the program. And, of course, they're talking about, let me just go to my notes here. because when I saw this, I had to watch it a couple of times.
They're mocking Trump and Heston's,
right?
And blaming him for deaths committed by gun violence. They're blaming him and mocking and making fun of him for.
But that's the obvious. That's just the obvious.
Right.
See,
and you saw some things in here. I started to watch this video. I could not watch it, as it was just so annoying, and I'm not a fan of Jim Carrey. But yes, this was a very it follows the script of the other gun control advocates, the most outspoken. The most outspoken gun control advocates will say, yes, we need to take the guns off the streets because they're killing all these people. At the same time, at the other side of their mouth, will say how much they need to kill people, that they should kill people. Look at the example of Alex+Jones and Piers Morgan. The next day after that debate, they're talking about and laughing about shooting him. We see Michael Moore saying, well, Harry Reid wouldn't have turned down Feinstein's bill if his grandkids were, massacred in a shooting. All this rhetoric from these gun control people, and they can't contain themselves from who they are, the tyrants, the oppressors, the liars, the manipulators. So that comes out afterwards, after the fact, and they're exposed for who they are.
And I totally agree. The 5-minute satire is obviously in poor taste. It's mocking a man who died, who's been Charlton Heston, a man who passed away. But if you look at it from an unemotional, just from a detective, if you will, an investigative viewpoint, about 42 or 43 seconds into the satire, they cut to Jim Carrey singing and playing. I think he was playing a guitar and singing about being satirical about gun ownership. If you look at the back, well, first of all, let me back up here. About 45 or about 42 seconds into the satire, he talks about aliens, of course, meaning illegal immigrants, or at least that's what was intended. That was the intent. If you go back to Charlton Heston, what he said. But in this case, Carey was talking about aliens. And I'm not talking about illegal immigrants. He was talking now about aliens like, little green men from outer space aliens. And took that for a good 30 seconds, just to absurd levels. But think about the Illuminati aspect here. There was a lot of Illuminati, or shall we say, globalist influence that was telegraphed in this particular satire. And I have not heard anyone talk about this. Perhaps they have. If they have, that's great. The alien aspect was important because, of course, now we're talking about the demonic, the Luciferian influence here. At least some sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge acknowledgement. But then when they cut to, or when the satire cut to him singing about the guns and about loving guns in a very sarcastic manner, behind Jim Carrey stood three figures, one dressed like Abe Lincoln, the other dressed like John Lennon, and yet a third dressed like Mahatma Gandhi. And it's interesting to think about the placement of these individuals. Abraham Lincoln, John Lennon, of course, both shot in the head. The duality there that exists there. And then if you notice about 2 minutes and 45 seconds into the satire, a wolf is shown howling. Now you think, okay, it just was out of context. Well, not if you understand and if you look into the symbolism of the globalist. It's kind of like it was out of context, but it was part of a larger picture agenda. There's a reference to Sam Elliott, and of course they had the obligatory drawings of male genitalia as comparing the male genitalia with a weapon, okay? And you'll see a lot of times, too, when there's an Illuminati or a globalist or the occult or the demonic, Luciferian, whatever you want to call this, you will notice that there's a lot of references to sexuality, the male genitalia, the female, whatever, but in this case it was male. And then, of course, the obligatory satirical comparison of the bigger the gun, the smaller, the male genitalia. But all of this combined, if you look at this in its totality, there's the obvious satirical aspect of this. But more importantly, there's the subliminal part to this that I think it would be a grave mistake for us not to understand what and who and why is behind all of this. I think we really need to look at this because I don't believe that this was just a Jim Carrey production in and of itself. I believe that there was more to this, is more to this, and I think if you look closely, you'll see that that is indeed a very heavily influential factor in this. So understand that we can get very, very emotional about this. We can get very ugly about this. We can say, oh, Jim Carrey's just a crass human being, and he is. But on the other hand, what's the larger picture being telegraphed? What's the larger picture here to this? Are we using our emotions hobbling our effectiveness in analyzing what we're seeing? And I think a lot of times they are. So we have to look at this in a very objective, very very factual aspect. That doesn't mean that that we should. And once again, too, we don't, as Christians, obviously we don't agree with this, with this Luciferian Illuminati type of situation. But it's good for us as Christians to understand it, so we understand what we're being attacked with, what the subliminal aspects of this are, and the dangers that are associated with this. Because don't forget, Hollywood is extremely. Hollywood is, in fact, in the motion picture industry, is in fact, they do in fact telegraph the goals, objectives, and agenda of the Illuminati. And that's why, too, when we look at films like what was that? Skyfall.
Olympus.
Well, Olympus
is home. Skyfall. I don't know.
Skyfall. Okay, and you look at the timing, and you look at what's involved in all of these movies, and the dates that they're released, and the various subliminal messages that each one carries. You can see how influenced Hollywood is by this ideology of the Illuminati. And no one wants to talk. And I don't get this. I shouldn't say no one. Very few want to talk about the very people who run the world or who control the world. But at the core, aren't these people isn't this what we're talking about at the very end? Isn't this where the war is? It's between these people and the rest. It's between these very people who believe that they are superior to us, that are behind all of this. So this is where the front battle is. This is where the front lines are, at the very root of all of this.
For some, yeah. while some focus on what those people are doing, at the same time, we need to focus on what we need to be doing, as a lot of what we see in the news is just to fill our minds with things that are not accurate, for distractions, for disinformation. While there are grains of truth and important issues talked about, right now, we are inundated with, in one day, in 24 hours, with as much news headlines that it would take a week, a year ago, I would say. To the extent I haven't been doing this long, but I've never seen the increase in fear-mongering, whether it be through wars, economic collapse, as the dangers are real, and they're very real. They're presented to us on a daily basis now.
And they're presented with a lot of emotion. If you notice, for example, the tenor that Drudge, for example, has been putting up headlines, the tenor of the headlines, it's different. It's a very it's coming from a very emotional area. Folks, we're up against the top of the hour break. I want to thank you very much for staying tuned in to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And I want to just say hello to the listeners in British Columbia. This past hour was sponsored by Ramblin' Firearms of British Columbia. Also, to those listening, we hear you. Thank you for sending messages from London, United Kingdom, and also in Germany and New South Wales, Australia. We're going to be right back after these messages. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? What if we never really had freedom? Tonight, what if we only think that we're free? What if freedom is just a myth? What if it's the kind of myth that allows the establishment to orchestrate conformity? What if the population thinks we have freedom and self-determination, but in reality, everything we do is based on a blueprint molded to the shape that the elites desire? What if the choices that we make come from a menu that the government has written? What if every time society uncovered natural rights and the natural law, the government was not far behind, ready to insert its artificial laws before we all got carried away with freedom? What if for every law that is innate and true and immutable, there is another law that is completely man-made and utterly fictional and destructive of freedom? What if this was done to distort our understanding of reality and sense of purpose? What if the natural law was liberating to human beings, but dangerous to the government because it signified that the rule of law exists outside of the government? What if that's why government demands a monopoly on violence and a monopoly on articulating the law? What if the government is afraid that if you exercise your natural rights, you could dilute the power of government? What if freedom was actually our birthright, a part of our humanity, along with the gift of free will? What if Jefferson was right, and we are all endowed by our Creator with the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? What if the government doesn't accept that? What if the natural law was co-opted by government in order to rob us of that birthright, to pull the wool over our eyes, and to replace a real freedom that derives from our humanity with an artificial sense of freedom that exists at the pleasure and the mercy of the government? What if the Constitution has been amended by consensus? What if those who have taken an oath to uphold it, almost to a person, have agreed not to do so? What if in this way our Constitution has become meaningless? What if in this way our republic has been turned into the very thing the Constitution was written to prevent? What if we really have mob rule, where the majority gets its way, right or wrong? What if the government put your rights up to a vote? What if a majority voted to take away the rights of persons in groups it hated or fears? What if the voters got to approve your ownership of property or the size of your income or even your choice of a spouse? What if the idea of government-enforced fairness was a way to deceive us? What if the demand for fairness was just another way to neutralize the rule of law and force it to submit to the rule of government? What if the government could get your income before you do? What if the government just took that income and gave it away in your name? What if the government persuaded a majority to think that somehow its theft of your property was in pursuit of fairness? What if corporations and government have forged an unholy alliance? What if the idea of government regulation of business was just a way for some corporations to insert themselves into the machinery of government? What if those corporations became the tools of government to stamp out competition, to stifle the free market, and to maintain dominance? What if the American corporate scene is full of zombie companies, trudging on despite inefficiencies, lack of profits, low quality of goods and services, because they are animated no longer by the free market and the free choices of consumers seeking the best goods and services, but rather they exist at the pleasure and the mercy and because of the largesse of the government? What if the economy is moribund precisely because the government is trying to revive it? What if we didn't have a chance to do anything about this because both the Republican wing and the Democratic wing of the big government party each sought to maintain this unfree status? What if these presidential primaries mean nothing because the groups running them were simply different flavors of the same progressive tendency to expand both the welfare and the warfare state? What if what's best for you can never be determined objectively by one central government, but must consistently be renegotiated by you, by free people operating in an environment free from aggression, where no one can dictate for another what's best for him? What if you could secure your freedom by telling the government enough is enough? What if a selfish defense of your property enhanced everyone's freedom? What if the best government really is the one that governs least? What if you could ignore the government? What if you could shrink the government down to the confines of the Constitution? What if the natural law really did trump the government's law? What if we could be truly free to pursue our own happiness? What if we had the courage to make this happen? From New York, defending freedom.
Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. That was Judge Andrew Napolitano. The key word there is courage, and I'm sure everyone, most people have heard that treatise that he gave. It's timely. It was timely when he gave it. Several months ago, I believe it was. Now maybe longer than that. But the key word there is courage. And speaking of courage, ladies and gentlemen, do you know right now the Supreme Court is arguing, or is listening to arguments about the homosexual issue, the legality of California's Proposition 8, the legality of the attempt by the homosexual element, and these are my words now. I am actually describing what I see taking place. The homosexual agenda in America to be recognized, not recognized necessarily, that's their word, to have equal rights. Perhaps Rachel Maddow would say equal rights for the homosexual agenda. That's what they want, equal rights, as guaranteed by the Constitution. But isn't it something that's not? Do we understand, ladies and gentlemen? Does everyone understand that this is not the argument? It's not the case. Look, here's the situation. It's not about civil rights. It's about civil wrongs. It's not about civil rights or the inability or the trampling of rights of the homosexual element, in the homosexuals in our society, in our nation. It is not about equal rights for homosexuals. It is about the perversion of our society. This is, and make no doubt about it, this is a communist objective. And you might laugh. I can hear people laughing almost. I can see or feel people's eyes roll back in their heads as they say, come on, this has nothing to do with communism. It has everything to do with communism. It has everything to do with this ideology. Back in 1980.
With social engineering, I would say. Not exactly specifically communism, but evil, encompassing not only the world, but our free republic, once free republic.
And I'm saddened because where are the Christian pastors, the Christian ministers? Where are the Christians themselves to make their presence known in Washington in front of the Supreme Court building or in any court building? Where is the action instead of the words by the Christian pastors, by the people, by the Christians themselves? I dare say that they lack the courage that Judge Andrew Napolitano spoke of. Now, I do understand, obviously, that we as Christians have jobs, we have commitments, we can't, I understand all of that. But, what, Joe, wasn't there something just recently, perhaps we talked about this week in, was it Paris, one of the big European cities, where there was a demonstration, homosexual, remember our show yesterday? Didn't we talk about that? About the demonstration where they were attempting to legalize, recognize same-sex marriages, and there was a protest in Europe. And what happened? The crowd was gassed by police. They used tear gas on the crowd.
Yeah, we did mention about protests. I don't know if it was in Europe. Was it in Europe?
I think it was in France.
Maybe in France. Yeah, I think you're right.
But see, in America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, you're telling me that the French citizens can amass a group of people in opposition to legalizing homosexual marriage? I'm not even going to dignify it by saying same-sex or gay marriage. Are you telling me that there's no Christian pastor, no Christian minister who can organize a protest, a visible presence against this travesty, this perversion, this redefining of marriage, of traditional marriage? Yet we see nothing. It's quiet. Crickets are chirping. Let's look back really quick. In 1986, the United States Supreme Court, Bowers versus Hardwick, upheld the right of the states to adopt sodomy laws Now, Chief Justice Warren Burger wrote in his concurring opinion that society had historically held negative attitudes toward homosexual sex. And he quoted Sir William Blackstone's description of sodomy as a crime not fit to be named. The Chief Justice wrote in his opinion, to hold that the act of homosexual sodomy is somehow protected as a fundamental right would be to cast aside millennia of moral teaching. Hey, Rachel Maddow, that sentence is for you. 17 years later, by the way, in 2003, the Supreme Court directly overruled Bowers versus Hardwick in the case of Lawrence v. Texas, thus casting aside thousands of years of moral teaching. In the oral argument before the court, Justice Antonio Scalia said from the bench that some were arguing that the case had nothing to do with same-sex marriage. Scalia said, "Don't you believe it? Before Lawrence, same-sex marriage was rarely, if ever, mentioned in public discourse." Scalia wrote in his dissent, laws against persons of the same gender marrying were sustainable only in light of Bauer's validation of laws based on moral choices. See, Scalia's prediction that the floodgates would open to same-sex marriage with Lawrence, with the invalidation of that particular legal suit, Lawrence v. Texas, of sodomy laws proved to be absolutely 100% correct. Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island, Maine, Iowa, D.C., they've authorized people of the same gender to marry, and in 2008, well, California narrowly defeated an effort to authorize same-sex marriage in the state. Well, what we were not discussing just a few short years ago, not even referencing, is now the law in the states I mentioned, and quite likely to be the law in other states, and quite likely, in my view, despite the oral arguments and the tenor of the Supreme Court, the questions being raised, when everyone's grasping at this hope, at this, and attempting to micromanage or microanalyze what the court is thinking based on the questions they asked Ted Olson and others, it's going to be the law of the land. That's my view. Justice Scalia, by the way, in his dissent, wrote that the court has largely signed on to the so-called homosexual agenda. A major portion of the discussion in Lawrence v. Texas, by the way, dealt with the history of the issue, and Justice Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion, critical of Chief Justice Warren Burger's statement in the Bowers opinion, wrote that homosexuality was an historically condemned practice. Well, biblically too, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I believe that God frowns upon that. Kennedy emphasized, by the way, in a ruling in it was, I believe it was a 1981 European Court of Human Rights case. I'm not familiar with the case itself, but ignored the historical record as to the original source of the term of sodomy. In Genesis 19, God records how he dealt with a community where all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house in an attempt to rape male visitors to Lot's house. Remember that? I mean, people watching perhaps on the History Channel the Bible might have seen kind of a sort of a interpretation of that. Well, God's destruction of Sodom in other towns that decided to adopt these wicked ways of the devil. It was so significant that it became the only crime in history named after a town. And think about that. Think about that for a second. Where does the term sodomy originate? after a town that got destroyed because of the behavior. And for centuries, and even thousands of years until now, the homosexual acts were illegal and have been illegal. It's crazy to think about.
Listening to whatever show we were listening today while we were driving around,
right?
Well, they were talking about and quoting the Supreme Court justices and what they were saying. The one Supreme Court justice, like he said, stated that this was a new homosexual marriage is newer than the internet, newer than cell phones.
That was Ted Olson, by the way. Ted Olson, whose wife Barbara reportedly died in the plane crash at the Pentagon on 9/11. Ted Olson, the beacon of morality or immorality.
But what we didn't hear from him or from the commentator we were listening to was that it is anything but a new idea, that we have biblical examples of places, Sodom and Gomorrah, that went that route and were judged for doing so.
Yeah.
Stating that might violate FCC laws and other Supreme Court laws, as they are now, one nation under evil instead of one nation under God.
Well, it's interesting, like I said, and like was noted by the Supreme Court Justice. Geez, you've got an act that has a town named after it. You would think that people would learn from history, especially biblical history. Of course, we have a secularized nation at this point. And once again, I ask, where are the ministers? Where are the Christian pastors? Where are the people who are so outraged by the action? And like I said, it's not gay, it's homosexual. Why? Is this hate speech? No, it's not hate speech. We are redefining the language.
Right. And you know where they are? Those people are now part of the accepting homosexuality. Well, there are some people who still will stand up and speak the truth, this truth of the Lord, at least, knowing what is good and what is evil. And they are more and more called lunatics, called fringe, called extremists for their views, hate mongers.
It begins to once again, I refer back to, and folks, you can look this up, and I really recommend, if you don't have this in your library, grab yourself a copy of The Naked Truth, The Naked Communist Revisited, or better yet, if you can find a copy of The Naked Communist, grab a copy of that, because it does talk about what we're seeing today, how these goals are communist in nature and ultimately global in nature by the Illuminati. These are being pushed by the Illuminati, by the power people that empower the people who believe that they are superior to us in all ways, but in fact they're not. They're parasites, or they're host to parasites. And I mean that literally. If you go back to life as an investigator, is like a box of chocolates. They're hosts to parasites. But what we have is the elimination of all laws governing obscenity by calling such laws censorship and a violation of free speech and a free press. We've got a breakdown of our cultural standards of moral and morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, and then Hollywood, and of course TV. The other thing as well, and I guess at the core issue here is to present homosexuality, the denigration of traditional marriage, the denigration of the traditional family, promiscuity, to promote promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Think about this, and I've said this before. Remember how, and folks, Probably not as old as I am, okay. I feel older every day. But promiscuity, how is it viewed today on television or even in schools or wherever versus 1958 or any time during the 50s? In the 1950s, any young boy found with a condom in his possession in school would have been expelled. Today, they're given out in schools, and the boys and girls have classes on how to use them. Consider where we're at. Many schools provide free abortion clinics or free abortion clinic transportation for students without any parental notification whatsoever. Can you imagine that taking place back in the 50s? And, of course, what's the answer by the Rachel Maddows of the world? And, yes, I am singling Rachel Maddow out because I'd love to go head-to-head with her in a debate on this. Stop and look. Stop and think. Stop and compare. Look at how much has changed in the last half a century. It makes absolutely no sense unless there is a driving force behind this change in strategy. This driving force was put in motion a couple of generations ago. The entertainment industry in Hollywood, backed by the Illuminati, those very people who are in power, who are pulling the puppet strings of Obama and other leaders. They are exploiting, they are promoting the sexual revolutions in the movies, the television shows, in commercials, in advertising. Understand what is taking place, folks. Many, many naive women were deceived back in the days, think about this, of women's liberation, the feminist movement. Where did the feminist movement originate? Do we know? Of course we do. Who promoted the feminist movement? Think about this. You see, everything that we're looking at today, everything is a culmination or the end game scenario of plans that were started long ago. We're seeing the end game play out. This is nothing is happening today by accident. And we've got political, moral, and spiritual eunuchs representing us. You think a letter to your congressman is going to help or get answers about why DHS is arming themselves? Do you think that the mainstream media is going to give you any answers? Do you think that there's going to be any intellectual conversation allowed? We can't even get an answer about Benghazi. We can't even get an answer about who in the hell is in the White House. We cannot get an answer about what this man's real name is, about what his passport information shows. We can't get information about this guy in the White House, about his birth records. And to ask it, well, no, we are absolutely conspiratorial and just insane, or worse, racist. And people run from that word. If that makes me a racist, then I'm proud to be a racist.
And, continuing on what you're saying, we see all this sin, this evil encompassing the world, and including our country, our towns, states, neighborhoods, our families. And we are charged not to be discouraged or to lose hope, because we have a duty to stay in the Bible, to pray, and to seek the Lord no matter what conditions we are in. We know we will go through tribulations and troubles. As in John, it says, I had said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. But take heed, I have overcome the world.
And those words are extremely important, Joe. I got to tell you, man, that's the only thing we can hang our hat on, really. I mean, I don't mean to sound glib when I say hang our hat on. You know what I mean.
Right.
We can take comfort in that. But our churches have been infiltrated. The people, the value system in our churches it's been replaced. The religion has become a social religion. The Bible is being discredited and has been discredited among various religions and within the various churches all across America. And there's an emphasis for the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch or need the Bible. This, again, is part of this communist agenda that no one wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. It's the core of these problems. In my view, mainline denominational churches are concerned with raising money and being nice to everyone and accepting of everyone, and they're so afraid of hurting people's feelings. They're so afraid of calling out and saying, look, the act of homosexuality, it's a sin. No, you've got churches that advertise all, including homosexuals. Homosexuals are welcome. I know a church in Milwaukee that does just that. Don't tell me there aren't churches like that out there. But true Christianity was based on Jesus being saved, or was based on Jesus, and of course, being saved by the grace of Jesus, and so on. But all other, well, you know what? I'm not going to go down that road. All I'm going to say is this: there's this incredible silence. And is silence not complicity when we can go before the Supreme Court and we can make our displeasure known and we can call out the Ted Olsons of the world and these freaks that adhere to this repulsive, repugnant, and biblically unsound behavior? People say, well, they're born that way. I stipulate that it's environmental. People talk about evolution. That, of course, is a religion in and of itself, but I don't believe for one moment that people are born as homosexuals. I believe it's a combination of many, many things, but I do believe if there are such heavy tendencies to that behavior, then I believe as Christians, if you are truly a Christian, then you've got to put a cap on it. And you've got to seek repentance and salvation. But I'm not preaching. I don't want to preach. I just have to say that we're seeing, are we not, the unfolding of look at what's going on around you, folks. Pick up your head from your iPad or your computer screen and look what's going on around you. Are we not seeing the very end of the morality of the United States? Are we not seeing the very end of the United States or of America as the ideology as it once was? Are we not seeing the armaments being built up against us? Are we not seeing the Christians among us that are in the crosshairs of the Department of Homeland Security, and no one is talking about this? Or if we do, the Krauthammers of the world, as conservative as they are saying it's a bunch of cave-dwelling people just making all of this up and being hysterical about it. Those who think the 15 senators or 15 Congress or 15 representatives or Congresspeople are going to get any type of answer from Janet Napolitano or anyone else under the federal government about what's going on, what's truly going on, good luck with that. That's not going to happen. They're buying time. And I have a feeling that we're going to see. And I don't know when, but look at the big picture. Look at what's happening.
Yeah, even in Egypt, there's a story out today about an Egyptian mosque turned into a house of torture for Christians after a Muslim Brotherhood protest. Islamic hardliners stoned a mosque in suburban Cairo, turning it into a torture chamber for Christians who had been demonstrating against the ruling Muslim Brotherhood. In the latest case of violent persecution that experts fear will only get worse. Such stories have become increasingly common as tensions between Egypt's Muslim and Coptic Christians, Muslim Brotherhood and Coptic Christians mount. But in the latest case, mosque officials collaborated much of the account, even filed a police report. Demonstrators some of whom were Muslims, say they were taken from the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters in suburban Cairo to a nearby mosque on Friday and tortured for hours by hardline militiamen. They were tortured for hours by hardline militia members. Yeah. The Muslim Brotherhood, Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, Shougabay, University of Denver's professor on Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, said, "There is no longer anything to hold them back. The floodgates are opened." Officials at the mosque said radical militias stormed the building after Friday prayers, and other people have gone on to denounce the violence, but we have seen this only getting worse in the countries we have, with our tax dollars, allowed our government to overthrow.
Isn't that just great? See what we did with Arab Spring. Of course, everyone is clapping about Arab Spring. How great it is to free Egypt from the constraints of Mubarak. How great it is for the United States to go in there under the Obama plan, the Obama State Department, the Obama foreign policy, and to free the oppressed. Yet Christians are in the crosshairs in Egypt and every other country that has Muslim Brotherhood, including Saudi Arabia. And yet, look what we're doing here at home as well. What's the TSA doing? They're giving the Saudis a pass at airports. Meanwhile, if you are a Christian gun owner, conservative returning veteran, or anyone who speaks out against the current regime, you are hassled to no end. Whether it's a TSA checkpoint at an airport or elsewhere, you are on a list. And if you don't think these lists exist, they do. In fact, Christians... and folks, I will say this, where we are at right now, right today, based on my evaluation of all of the information that I've gotten from different sources, we are about April 18th, 1995. Think about what happened that following day in 1995. We saw Oklahoma City. We saw Oklahoma City bombing that killed, they say 168 people, a lot of children. That was a blood sacrifice. Folks, understand this. See, I used to laugh at people that said that. Oh, come on. And it's just a bunch of crazy Arab terrorists that blew up a building. And then, it was just Timothy McVeigh that blew up a building. Oh, no. There's more than that. In fact, we're going to be talking on the program as that anniversary gets close. We're going to be talking to and about the Oklahoma City bombing. But see, that was done for a specific purpose, and one of the purposes, not a collateral effect, but one of the goals was to demonize the patriot groups, the right-wing militia groups the ideologies espoused allegedly by Timothy McVeigh. But if you look closely at who McVeigh was involved with, what he was doing, and by the way, McVeigh was at Waco as well. Did you know that? Look it up. But anyway, we are going to see another Oklahoma City-style event take place. This is based on an analysis of information, and it will be blamed on, or worse, and it will be blamed on the Christians, the right-wing bitter, clinging, gun-grabbing people, the very people that Jim Carrey in his satire talks about. You're going to see it happen, and then you're going to see the clampdown, and then you're going to see the blowback, and then, of course, it's going to be timed with the economy and the flare-up in the Middle East. Does it feel like the entire world is out of control? I think it is. Well, it's an orchestrated chaos.
One thing we can take, we can be happy about in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, 16 through 18. So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not for the things that are seen, but as things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. End of quote.
God bless. I mean, where else do we turn to? I mean, what else do we have? And I go back to one thing my friend had said too. You know, when we get to heaven, or even on earth, but when we get to heaven and we see those who we left behind coming behind us, are they going to curse us for not doing anything when we had the chance to do something like we have right now? Are they going to curse our names? Are they going to say why? Are they going to ask us why we did nothing? The Supreme Court.
You mean, are we going to get to heaven and get yelled at?
I mean, I guess I'm using this as an example, but you know, how do we justify? I guess the point I'm trying to make is, how do we justify silence in the face of what's going on at the Supreme Court? How do we justify silence in the face of what's going on with the Department of Homeland Security? How do we justify silence at the TSA as our wives, our mothers, our aunts get groped and our children get groped, and we kick the crap out of Marines and embarrass Marines who served honorably our country?
Well, now, what if people who seem to be silent spend countless hours praying against these things in their own home, just choose not to be, out in the public about it? I'm sure there are a lot of those people. And
of course. Look, of course there are.
But yeah, and who you're speaking to, what you're speaking about, I think I would hope people could come and find their way back to the Lord. And I'll always pray that they do. But unfortunately, we're speaking to a people that not only don't care about the Lord, they don't even believe that he ever existed or regard him in any way. So you can't.
No, you're right. I mean, I understand that. We all have positions to play, and we talk about that. Everyone plays a certain position.
This is the way things have been set to unfold. The plans were written long ago, sealed up until the end times, until the end of time, to happen. They're planned to happen a specific and certain way. And we're seeing them played out right now.
And absolutely, it's exciting. But just because we know that we win in the end, that the church, the bride of Christ, wins in the end, we know how the story ends. God bless. That doesn't mean we have the luxury of laying down and staying silent for our faith, because to me, we have to. Now, those, of course, who are in prayer and fasting, and look, I understand that, but what I'm saying to you is, if we don't speak out against what is going on right now, if we don't tell a family member, tell a friend, tell a mundo, sorry, if we don't just spread the word and say, or figuratively now, grab somebody by the shoulders and kind of shake them and say, hey, wake up. Look what's going on around you. And educate them as to what the plans are. Educate them that this has been going on for generations. Tell them about the plans of the Illuminati. Tell them about the plans of the globalists. Identify the Ben Bernankes of the world, who this afternoon at their press conference. And folks, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching here, but so I'm going to just move to this afternoon at a press conference. Ben Bernanke was asked a question. Did you see this, Joe? About he was asked whether the Fed would ever impose depositor haircuts.
I only saw what you saw today, except for since we started the show.
Okay, all right. Well, he was asked whether this could happen. What was happening in Cyprus could happen. An American Fed Chairman Bernanke confirmed that Cyprus-style deposit haircut wealth confiscation is possible here in the United States. If the Cyprus event or another event in Europe were to become contagious and people lose confidence in the U.S. dollar, right now they're flocking to the dollar, which is why the Dow is going higher for those just joining us. Does anyone see? Do people talk about the real reason why the Dow is the way where it is and why metals are low? It's because the blowback from the Eurozone and other locations to the U.S. dollar, inflating temporarily as it might be the Dow numbers, and of course the flow of money, the dollars, the people going to the dollars as a safe haven. But don't forget what V said, the rush to the dollar is nothing more than putting everyone in a boat, much like putting everyone in a boat and sending that boat out without any power, without any oars, without any method of navigation, and then sinking that boat. That's exactly what's going to happen. That's what's planned. So at 3:18 p.m. Eastern Time, Bernanke was asked whether such a seizure of some deposits could happen, and of course his response was, "Yep." And see the word contagious. What word did Steve Quayle's Financial Insider use on Friday? Contagion. Isn't it interesting, the choice of words? But, of course, he said, depositor haircuts in the U.S. are extremely unlikely as the FDIC provides deposit insurance for customer deposits. Well, so did Cyprus. They had the equivalent of the FDIC in Cyprus. How's that working out for them? See, QE to infinity, as it's being pursued by Bernanke, is being downplayed by the mainstream media. It's being downplayed everywhere. But this is, in fact, monetizing our debt, and our debt is so unsustainable at this point. Our entire economy is a house of cards, and when everything falls, we're going to be forced into this new economy, this new one-world governing system. Now, there's going to be a time period, of course, while there's a regrouping and such, but where the dollar will still be worth money after the collapse, but if you're not prepared for it, if you have all of your money in the bank and you don't have any cash on hand, it's going to be bad. It will be bad.
Hitting on something I just sent you, a Steve Quayle alert. Urgent, possible Marine and FEMA mobilization in South Georgia. This man says he is a Marine Corps combat veteran living in Thomasville, Georgia. As of 10 a.m. yesterday, he spotted 4 AH-1 Whiskey Cobra attack helos carrying full ordnance Hellfire 1.75 millimeter rockets traveling on a northeast course. Not even 2 hours later, myself and several friends of mine spotted 2 CH-53 Sea Stallions headed in the opposite direction. These helos were not behaving as if they were in transit. They were at treetop level, lumbering across our town. I drove down to the FEMA warehouse where we have 2 in this town, one for supplies and one for the federal regional office, which is one of every online list as being an underground FEMA facility. Outside there were Ford F-350s loading pallets of supplies and ferrying back and forth to the federal regional office. Goes on to say, Steve could be wrong, but it looks like they were preparing to take over or respond to some sort of crisis. Yesterday, there was an article, I'm not sure if we hit or not, from InfoWars, hundreds of DHS armored trucks on the move. Footage from hundreds of armored trucks similar to the ones reportedly purchased recently by DHS has appeared online, raising more questions of their intended use. The video raises significant questions in the wake of reports that the DHS, headed by Napolitano, recently purchased 27 MRAT trucks, many believe are to be deployed to local law enforcement agencies around the country. And I'll post a link to that article in chat with all the videos on there.
Just to put it in perspective, okay, folks, we are seeing the preparations for war on American people. Don't There is absolutely no other way to put it, and it's a Hitler-esque style war. It is the brown shirts. It is the Reichstag moment. It's all of this combined, and you know, one thing too is you really study what happened during the Nazi regime in Germany. A couple of things really kind of stand out. Of course, you're not going to get this necessarily on the Hitler channel, or I'm sorry, the History Channel on your cable television network. But you know, the level of occult and the level of perversion in the Third Reich. But going back to American history, just briefly. Don't forget, 1774, muskets were banned from being imported here into this country. What's taking place right now? Well, there's this gun ban about to take hold, and believe me, it will. Whether it be a de facto ban by cornering the ammunition market, yeah, you might have a gun, but nothing to shoot with, or outright ban on guns. But in 1775, the British, of course, attempted the confiscation of our weapons. And in 1776, there was a revolution against the British Empire. You see how that played out? Unfortunately, apparently history is not taught in schools. And by the way, you want to argue facts, Jim Carrey, you want to argue facts. In 2011, there were 323 people killed by what one would term an assault rifle. In the same year, there were 496 people killed by hammers, 650 killed by knives. Oh, and by the way, 12,000 by drunk drivers. Oh yeah, and Jim Carrey and Rachel Maddow and others. How many by abortion? And yet you have such an outrage against assault weapons. And oh yes, of course, what we're seeing is normal. You see the Republican establishment, Karl Rove, Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, or whoever. I don't know if these people, by the way, I seriously, I don't know if they've commented on the movements of DHS, the purchases of weapons and bullets. But don't you think it's about time to start asking some questions and demanding answers? And don't you think it's about time, instead of talking about you know, what the Republican strategy is versus the Democrat and vice versa, don't you think we should start asking questions about what in the world is going on right now? I do. But I think it's pretty evident as to what's going on. I think that we're seeing right now, based on everything that like I said, all of our, and I know Joe's done so much research. I've done a lot of research. There is a backdoor gun registry that's going to be started. There's going to be gun confiscation, and there is going to be blood in the streets. By the way, on March 4th, Missouri Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder held a press conference and claimed that the Missouri Department of Revenue, and understand that word, folks, please put it in the front of your mind, revenue, IRS agents, revenuers, remember that word?
The old whiskey,
yeah, some of you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the people who ran alcohol through Prohibition
right.
would always be on the run from the revenuers.
The revenuers are coming.
Yeah, and then it was a fair fight back then, because they were, you know, they couldn't bring the whole arm of the federal government against you and tie you up in litigation for years with endless resources, to the point where no matter how many times you would win in court, they could keep coming.
That's right. Exactly. Oh, and I just want to mention this. I feel left out by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Hey, if anyone wants to forward this broadcast to the Southern Poverty Law Center because of us being a potential terrorist, We fit almost every, if you tick off the characteristics of terrorists, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, that's us. So, Mark Potok, hey, feel free to add us to your list. Add us to your list. Because you know why? This message, the message which we are taking to the streets, taking to the various people. See, this program is growing, and we are becoming a threat to you based on the emails I've been getting, based on the messages I've been getting, based on certain things. And I'm not going to get into this, but let me tell you, we have clearly struck a nerve. Clearly struck a nerve with some people. So, Mark of the Southern Poverty Law Center, feel free to characterize us as a terrorist organization. Jen Napolitano, feel free to characterize us as a terrorist organization. And by the way, apparently I'm not able to fly, nor is Joe. But that's another story for another time. But real quick, on March 4th, Missouri Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder held a press conference and claimed the Missouri Department of Revenue, the revenuers, have been working with the U.S. Department of what? Homeland Security, a product of the Bush administration, to install new hardware and software to obtain data on Missouri citizens and transfer this information to DHS and unnamed third parties. We talked about this right after it came out, but I want to remind everybody, you see, I'm going to tell you, whether you go in for your driver's license or whether it's Obamacare, hidden in the 20,000 pages of Obamacare regulations, which Joe is going through, and I cannot believe he's going through all this documentation. This is the centralization of power that we're talking about. This is the centralization of power on a state but also on a federal level, because you see, yesterday, State Senator Kurt Schaefer subpoenaed the Missouri Department of Revenue to force them to hand over documents shared between them and DHS or FEMA. Oh, yeah, FEMA. I forgot about that. As well as between them and the American Association of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, basically, and the third party that administers things for the DMV. So you think he's going to get an answer? In other words, Kirk Schaefer, who subpoenaed these documents, do you think that he's going to get a response? It would be like, and I remember this, remember, Joe, when you and I wrote about this, and in fact, I think this was one of my earlier Alex Jones appearances, where, remember when they did the opt-out? You remember that, right? Of course. All right. And I said, those people who were promoting this opt-out and talking about this, their personal information was being compiled by the TSA and then sent to the DHS, right? Remember that? Was that not proven correct? But we had this rum-dum journalist, and I'm not even going to dignify this by name, who said, hey, Mr. Hagmann, prove it. Because I just filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and you know what I got? I got a denial. And my response was, well, did you expect something different? Did you expect them to say, yeah, we're keeping a list and checking it, making a list and checking it twice? Did you expect that? And he responded back, you're a liar. But I don't want to sound, like it's nothing against the journalist. Okay, please. In fact, and I'm not even trying to go there. All I'm saying is, I think what we have to do, and I'm going to try to tone it down just a little bit, but I think what we have to do is really look at this as understanding that we're not getting the truth out of any department, out of any agency, out of any person, and all of this stuff at the federal level is so compartmentalized. Even if you had an honest person working at the federal level within, we'll say, DHS, do you think that they know what the others are doing toward the ultimate objective? No, of course not. So anyway, all things are working in a way that this backdoor gun registry that's taking place, the assimilation of all of your information, including your health records, into a centralized location. You talk about control, folks, you have not seen control. You will see the very people who are saying, oh, those mind-resistant anti-persons or anti-mind, what are they, MRAPs, those things, those tank things. They're just, that's just conspiracy hype. They're not, it's.
What about
look,
the
folks?
$500 million in aid given to Palestinian Authority that was just released that we talked about yesterday?
Hey, where do I sign? I was going to look. I got my checkbook out. Let's get more. I mean, how convoluted is this? But are we surprised? We actually create an enemy. And see, I guess, folks, as a normal guy, as a guy who really believed in my country, as a guy who really believed in my Republican conservative party before, as a guy who never thought that there could be complicity in any terrorist attacks at the highest levels of government or by some, as a guy who never believed that there was this cabal of people that were running things, to find out that we've been lied to. And maybe you're there right now. Maybe if you're listening to this program, you're saying, God, this guy is just really whacked out, man. What is he taking? Start on decaf, cut out the Red Bull, whatever. Look, when you find out that everything you've been told, everything you've been taught has been a lie, then you're going to get angry. But see, turn that anger into prayer and turn it into analysis and turn it into action. And you know what? Everyone listening to this program, we need to stick together because we have power in numbers. I really believe that. We have power in our listenership. Every one of you listening to this, you're a leader. God bless you for listening. Wow, I'm sorry. You know what? I don't know what I took before the show, whether it was whether my blood pressure medication kicked in or what. But folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're already up against the second hour. I want you to stay with us. Once again, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, Joe Hagmann. This past hour has been sponsored by the Freeze Dry Guy. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. Click on the link. Talk to the Freeze Dry Guy for all of your freeze dry food needs. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
If you're stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. What is intelligence? What is intelligence? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. You have that much.
Yeah, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 26th day of March 2013, countdown, 48 hours to Joe Hagmann's birthday. The big 3-0, he will be the big 3-0, 48 hours from now. Actually, he was born at 7:25 in the morning. I remember because, let's just say it was a long night. Anyway, and you know, he was such a problem coming into the world, and
it didn't stop after coming in.
I was trying to think of a way to phrase that it just never subsided. But anyway, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, for staying tuned to our program. Of course, we're a listener-supported broadcast. We want to thank everyone who has contributed to keep us on the air, and we want to thank everyone who has prayed for us, because we need that. And we want to thank everyone who has told someone else about the program. We want to thank everyone who has held with us through the technical glitches, through the whatever. Just thank you for being there. And like last night, you know, it's such a great feeling to know that you folks are out there. Like-minded people are out there, and we have to lift each other up. And I see, you know, I see that we have a chat room, obviously, and an interactive chat associated with our program. I can't focus on that during the program, but others can. And you know, it saddens me when there's dissension among people over small issues, when the larger issue is our salvation, where we're headed, what we're doing. And, you know, it's all part of, but recognize this, ladies and gentlemen. We're a family. And, you know, do you ever have like a big gathering at your food? Easter's coming up, and of course, you get family together, or Thanksgiving, or whatever the holiday or occasion might be. And of course, you know, good old Uncle Ed there, he's acting up again, and he goes off the rails. And I mean, but that's what families do. But in the end, at the end of the day, don't we all just kind of give each other a hug and a kiss and say, travel safe on your way home, God bless you, and thanks for coming? And that's what we are. That's what we see. This is what we are. But folks, recognize that you, listening to this program, and recognize that you as Christians are leaders of your family. And I understand, and Joe understands, we understand, it is difficult, so difficult to be able to talk with people, to relate to people, and to say, honey, look, this is what's going on. Pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on here, for example, in Cyprus. Let's work together at making a preparation, a plan of preparation, or sitting your adult children down and saying, you know, look, things are a mess, but we need to prepare. You see, we have to be proactive as leaders. We have to be proactive in doing this. And it's on my heart to say this. We have to be proactive. And there's something else is on my heart, too, and I just want to mention this quickly. I was talking to Steve Quayle today, and we had a couple of brief conversations. The individuals that are paid to sow dissent among people are active, are very active. There is dissent everywhere. They are attempting to conquer us from within. Folks, don't let that happen to you. Don't let others drive a wedge between the body of the church. And when I say the church, I mean the body of your belief in Christ. Don't let other people, and I see this unbelievable, and Steve and I were talking about this unbelievable madness where there's got to be, these people have got to sow dissension, and they must attack others. And it's all a game. Folks, understand it. It's all a profession. It's a job to them. It's a game. It's a plan. It's an orchestrated attempt to break us from within. This is part of the globalist agenda. You are actually seeing down the chain, if you imagine the chain, the links of the chain, as you get further down, you're actually seeing the bottom links of that chain infiltrating the various forums and the various discussion groups and even programs like this. It's happening. And whether you're listening to this in Asia or Europe or North America or South America, I want to say hello to my friend in Panama who's listening right now on his wireless device. I just want to say, don't fall. Don't allow that to happen. Don't allow these people to break into what you've got. Another thing, I want to announce this too, because I'm thinking about this. I forgot about this before. Last night, Tom Horn was a guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and I want to thank Tom publicly. We got a really nice plug. I didn't hear it myself, but I heard about it from others, where Tom had, during his broadcast, told people about being on our show and breaking the news about the Pope and the papacy and the Vatican on our show. And I thought, wow, how great is that? Thank you, Tom Horn, for doing that. Joe and I thank you for that. But just to kind of close out my end of this a little bit, we have to understand, once again, we have to understand what we're up against. the Luciferian mindset. Let's draw, just momentarily here, let's draw all of the programs we had in the past with Tom Horn, with Pastor David Langford. My goodness, Russ Dizdar, Doc Marquis, and of course, L.A. Marzulli. Folks, be prepared mentally and spiritually. Be prepared to see things that you will not, to see things that will totally
shatter your reality and belief system. And
scared me for a minute there when you started that sentence. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that will change things the way you know it to be, to the extent that most people will not have any clue, but we do know, because we know that Jesus died for our sins so we may be saved. All these things have been warned, have been given to us in writing in the Bible. We've been warned of these things, these deceptions. We have been warned of this world being corrupt and the blind leading the blind, the kings and the great people of this earth. They will eventually be brought down for all the things that they are doing. But we are not facing or battling kings of the earth. We are not battling homosexuality. The true battle is within ourselves. We need to battle and overcome the flesh in our own lives. And then we can march forward. And then as we are working on ourselves, we can move forward. But for those with no foundation in the Bible, with no spirituality, it's going to be chaos in their mind.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because if you are a police officer, or even if you watch police shows, you know, I mean, you've seen SWAT teams go in and raid a dangerous drug house or something, or whatever. Would you, listeners of this program, would you go out to battle? Or in that situation, if you were like a SWAT team member going out to against a bad guy, you know, a true bad guy, would you go out without your armor, without your body armor? Of course you wouldn't. That's the same thing. We have to have the armor of Ephesians. I mean, we have to have the armor of God. We have to, as you mentioned, Joe, we have to be right ourselves before we can be effective in battle.
And unlike body armor, which most of us, probably the majority, 99.9% of us don't have, freely given to us, freely is the most important protection.
You know, I just want to say this, and this kind of this is relevant, I suppose. One of the first exposures I had to a situation, this kind of wakes you up a little bit. You know, I was working with, as an operational asset for the FBI. And it was interesting because in our staging area, and we were dealing with some pretty nasty people. And I was the one that went in to do what I had to do, and I won't get into it, but I had to do something. And then, of course, you know, the takedown. But I was being, you know, they actually put me in body armor. They put me in a bulletproof vest. You know, with the back then too. By the way, it was heavy. It was heavy, and this was kind of a warm day. And so, in addition to that, they had to wire me up as well. And back then, you know, they didn't have the really cool stuff. It was, you know, like you see in the movies today. So it was the old duct tape on the chest hair for the wires, and then wiring up the back and stuff. So I mean, I felt like a robot basically. And I guess I can relate this to you too. It is kind of humorous, sick but humorous in a way. When I went into this house to do what I had to do, I was invited in by the individual inside. There were actually 3 men inside. The guy that answered the door let me in, and I had been there before, and I was familiar with the layout of the location. So walked me back into I'll just call it a living room. I'm not exactly sure what it was, even today. And I walked in on two guys engaged in the very thing that we're talking about, that the Supreme Court is talking about. And I don't believe they were married, okay? And here I am, sweating through. It was, once again, warm, so I'm sweating through my clothes and sweating through the wire and the body armor. And seeing this, I just felt like, wow, am I out of my element? And I guess the reason I mention that is a lot of us, don't you feel today that you're out of your element, that you go into a location or you go into a situation, not necessarily a location, but a situation where you feel the odd one out. And it's because of your Christian beliefs, or it's because of your ideology. It's because it's not what people today consider normal, even in so-called conservative circles. The grounding. And this is why I love Joe so much with regard to what he does with the Scripture. The grounding is in the Scripture. And without that, my goodness, all the body armor wouldn't protect you, and all the wires wouldn't protect you, and all the backup wouldn't protect you. I don't know. It just seems like we're out of our element. But the one thing, when we're looking at what's taking place in a world situation, let's look at this Luciferian group of thinkers, the manipulators, the Illuminati pyramid through and what's taking place through mind control, whether you know it or not, whether you even believe it or not, it doesn't matter, because we're getting hit by it. But this pyramid, this group, this controlling group, it's composed of an elite group, or they think they're elite, but understand at the very core of the banking issue and the very core of the immorality issue, we're fighting a cabal of at the end of the line. And I once again, I wouldn't have believed my own words 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but through research and my own research, it is what it is. You're talking about some elite royal bloodlines, of which the past 34 of the 43 presidents that we've had are connected to an elite royal bloodline that control all world affairs. Don't think, folks, when Alex Jones talks about, and Tex or Jim Mars, I'm not sure which one, talks about the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission. Look, these groups, these individuals that control world affairs, are institutions. The Vatican. Does that mean I'm getting down on Catholics? No. The Vatican, the monarchy, the United Nations, NATO, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the International Monetary Fund, the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, the Federal Reserve, United Way, Habitat for Humanity, the World Wildlife Federation, Greenpeace, Al Gore. By the way, Al Gore's got a website. Our website has more traffic than Al Gore. Just want to, you know what? I'm kind of proud of that. Anyway, the Salvation Army, the Red Shield of the Rothschild clan, the Watchtower Society, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, meaning the Mormons, and the Roman Catholic Church hierarchy, the various hierarchies. I guess what I'm saying is, did I leave anyone out? The Pinochle Club that you belong to. I'm just kidding. No. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Everything has been infiltrated. I shouldn't say everything. The majority of groups have been infiltrated by this influence and ideology of this elite royal bloodline, these people who believe that they're better than us, and they are adherent to this Luciferian mindset, and this feeds this. By the way, the Illuminati mindset feeds insatiably on fear. And are we not seeing today fear? What's the best way to combat fear? Through knowledge and prayer, isn't it? Knowledge and prayer, and not necessarily in that order, but it's what we're seeing is still the tip of the iceberg, because this goes so deep. And I feel like I've had a revelation, because the more you look into it, and Joe said before the program, we were talking about something. Oh, we were talking about the Jim Carrey video. And I said, you know what, now, I see this Illuminati influence in this video that no one's talking about. And he started laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? He said, it's just funny to hear you say that. Yeah. And I had to stop and think, man, did I just say that? It just rolled off so quickly and so easily. But you see, once you start investigating this, and all of the groups I mentioned, investigate yourself. You can investigate. Don't limit yourself to the internet. Folks, I beg of you, because we still have some time, read. Grab a book from your library. It doesn't cost anything. Read. Read the book. Read the various books and understand what we're dealing with, the mindset, and understand that the enemy is formidable, but our God is more formidable. Understand the neuro-linguistic programming and the subliminal messaging and the symbolism and the reverse symbolism and the duality that I talked about last week, I think it was. Understand this, but don't be paralyzed. I call it paralysis by analysis. Don't be paralyzed by it. Just understand it so you can recognize it for what it is, and then you can fight against it. I just want to say it is my pleasure, and I'm humbled to be, and Joe and I were talking about this as well, we're humbled to be a part of your life. And we just want to say thank you for allowing us to be a part of your life. And we hope, upon hope, that you leave after the 3 hours of our show a little bit more knowledgeable and a little bit better. Kind of like the campsite thing, you know, you go to a campsite, you leave it better for the next person. You leave it better than the way you found it. We hope that through our program, you gain insight, you gain knowledge, you gain strength. We can provide this. We're vessels, and we can provide this for you. And I know I've dominated a lot of the show. Joe and I were talking at the break. I said, I don't know, just stuff a rag in my mouth or something, No, I'm just going crazy.
Because you're going to have a rag in your mouth tomorrow.
Yeah, actually,
you're not going to be able to talk for a little while. So might as well let it go now.
But thanks for giving me that room. But anyway, folks, if you want to chime in, I know that like I said, it's been pretty dominant this show. But our phone number is 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839 for any comments, questions, concerns, criticisms, and if you are Rachel Maddow or Mark Patak from Southern Poverty Law Center, we'll put you at the front of the line. But
no, we won't, because we don't know where.
Oh, that's right. We don't screen calls, so who knows.
All right, let's go. Here, your area code 408. You've been on hold almost the whole show. Coming to you first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yeah, is this me?
You are live. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know where to begin. I sent you an email today about a series of earthquakes. They're happening every 188 days. Did you get that?
I did not I've not had a chance to go through my email today yet, but I know what you're talking about, the 188-day cycle, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of sitting on that because it's been so accurate so far. And I just came across something this afternoon that there was this large eruption, I guess, in Brazil, kind of like the eruption that happened in Peru just before the third earthquake in that cycle, the 9.0 in Japan. Are you aware of that?
Say that again, caller, just for my benefit. Repeat what you just said.
Yeah, Doug, I'd like to have you investigate this. It's something I've been working on for quite some time. I think I heard you on with Augusto Perez once, but he's into this comet that was coming through, and there was a series of earthquakes that happened when this comet aligned. Every 188 days, the comet's gone, and all the buzz about the comet is gone, but the earthquakes continue every 188 days. With one exception. There was one earthquake that came one day early, and that was Oaxaca earthquake. They happened to have an earthquake drill that day for a 7.9 earthquake. And if you remember, our president's daughter was there that particular day with her big entourage, and all these Secret Service people. And the drill started at 12 o'clock for 7.9, and the earthquake occurred at 12:02. It was a 7.9. And it just kind of struck everyone as kind of interesting. It's the only one in the cycle of 188 days that was different. But otherwise, the cycles continued, and no one's talking about it. Now, the next day is April 2nd. And previous to the earthquake, which was Fukushima, which was a 9.0, which was, I think, kind of important, everyone thought the next one would be really big too, but it came a day early. So now we're on the cycle again, and the next one is coming. There's this big rift in Brazil, exactly like there was in Peru just before the 9.0.
Okay.
Japan.
Now, caller. Okay, caller. By the way, I looked at my email box. If you send it to director@homelandsecurityus.com, I don't have it.
I got bounced. I got bounced from you, but I don't know if it went through to both of you. I CC'd you. I got a bounce on it because your mailbox was full.
Okay, I will fix that right now, and I apologize for that. Normally, I get a warning when that happens. Apparently, I must have gotten a lot of emails, and I apologize. But okay, where are we at within this 188-day cycle now? Are we? I just want to be certain here. By your calculation, are we coming up on it?
My calculations is, if it's right on time, it would be about 5:24 Pacific on April 2nd. But that's just the calculations. I'm hoping it will come on April Fool's Day, because if it comes sooner, it seems like it has less of an impact. But that's only based on the one time it came sooner, which coincided with our president's daughter's vacation. It's got a
I have your
couple of
earthquake here.
spins.
There's your earthquake.
You can.
I got your email here. Yeah. And I'm checking it out right now. Well, one thing I have noticed over the last couple of days is a swarm of earthquakes around California too. They're smaller in their readings. They're whatever they're called, but there's a huge amount of earthquakes on the.
Oh yeah, I'm looking for signs.
Up and down the West Coast.
For some big beachings or something. But if you look at the pattern, and there's a few guys on YouTube that have been making videos. Some are better than others, but the pattern continues. We're looking. The one place that hasn't been touched is the West Coast. And we're looking at Cascadia. It went off at 1700. It sent a tsunami all the way to Japan. They can confirm on both sides, both by tree rings in Oregon and both by books in Japan. They figure that was a 9+. I live between the San Andreas and the Hayward, and they're both overdue, and they're both ready for an 8+. And if you're into conspiracy, they just came out with, USGS came out with a thing about a month ago saying that California could very well have a statewide earthquake. And they had a drill, I believe, in Los Angeles last Thursday for a 7.9, and in San Francisco for a 7.8. I mean, it just sounds ominous to me. I mean, I took a look at the earthquake that happened when Obama's daughter was in Oaxaca, and I go, well, what are the odds of a drill going off on the day of an event? And then I found myself at Sandy Hook, and you can't imagine what happened when I found myself there. The odds of drills, the government drills. Oh, yes, we can. It is. It's amazing the number of coincidences that are involved in these things, and I wouldn't have opened my mind to this. I love you guys, father and son. My son sent me an email, and he told me that I was an idiot because George Bush was behind 9/11, and only because I loved him did I open the door into looking into those things. Only because of that. I honored him in that because I was going to prove him wrong. And I was
What would you come up with?
What did I come up with?
Well, let me rephrase that question, okay? I'm not prepared to say George Bush was behind 9/11 by any stretch.
Neither am I. I know better than to say that.
Okay, but, you know, if you were like me after it happened, you were all, I mean, look, I was like, hey, these guys in the desert.
I was mind-controlled, and I yelled, Osama bin Laden. There was a first word out of my mouth. I was brainwashed. Totally. Yeah. I was totally brainwashed. And then, you know, when I looked into this, I mean, I had a closed mind. I was going to prove my son wrong. But I love him. And because I love him, I'm going to look into this. It says, I got a friend of mine who can look up in the sky and see fake clouds and see the planes making them and not say a thing. Not say a thing. And he's la, la, la. He's my best friend. He's my brother. I love him to death. But he does not understand Romans 12:9. It says, let not your love be in hypocrisy. You know, it says to hate what is evil and to love what is good. No one's doing that anymore.
Of course not.
No, we're not hating evil. We weak, evil, yeah, sure. Easter egg hunts at churches.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas tree in churches. Excuse me. And we don't love what is good. Who are the people that everyone looks up? Who do we look up at? Billy Graham? Pat Robertson? Everyone's looking to these guys for leadership. And if you take a good look at them, if you go online, you do an honest look at who's in the pulpits of our churches and who's about to sell us out to the great deception. Because no one's going to stand up. No one's going to hate evil. And you guys do. And God bless you. God bless you for exposing that. You know, and, you know, I don't know if Steve Quayle's listening. God bless you, Steve Quayle, because you said something that meant very much to me. You said, it's not who wants to kill you that matters. He said, it's who wants to keep you alive. And I pray that who wants to keep you alive is the God of the universe, the one who's in charge of everything. I just bless you guys in Jesus' name.
Thank you, caller. God bless you, my friend.
Oh, thank you for being there.
Well, you're an inspiration, and I got to tell you, sometimes the Father can learn from the Son.
Oh, proving you have. I'm so inspired by your son. I mean, he is so right dead on. He is so dead on, and he inspires me. Much the same, I guess, as he inspires you. You really need to listen to him because he has the heartbeat of God on him. He's a prophet.
Well, thank you, caller. God bless you, my friend.
Oh, thank you for being
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for the kind words.
Oh, those aren't mine. I believe there's a lot of people who echo. God bless.
Well, you have a great night. Thanks. We're going to move right along here. Next up is area code 615. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me?
Loud
Hello?
and clear.
We can. Yes, we can.
All right. Good stuff. Yeah, I called in a couple weeks back. I think you were sick, the younger Hagmann, but I was the one about the freedom movement, the Patriot Network, starting up like a 24/7 thing.
Yeah, I got your email. Yep, I remember that fully. Yep.
All right, yes, sir. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well,
I was just going to say, you go.
Boy, I'll tell you, there's been a lot of changes. Actually, for example, Rick Wiles, I'll just mention him as one example. He's undergoing a lot of changes, a lot of expansion, a lot of things. There are individuals out there that are undergoing expansions or contractions, if you will, and other things. To organize under an umbrella, so to speak, is somewhat of a very, I've learned based on research, it might be counterproductive to the extent that we would be inadvertently limiting others and even ourselves to a point if we do it wrong or incorrectly. I just want to preface, whatever you're going to say, it's not that we have not addressed this idea. It's the logistics of it, the various nuances of it. There are issues that we didn't see initially that the unintended consequences could have unintended consequences. But go ahead and what do you have to say?
Well, along with what you're saying, would you be afraid of infiltrators, basically? Is that kind of the direction that you were talking about? Or like, like COINTELPRO type of stuff?
Actually, no. I'm more concerned, and others are more concerned with having operationally, although we would not be operationally in one place, we could be taken down a lot easier through a connection, if you will. You know what? I suppose like a COINTELPRO type operation could exist. It'd be like, consider this. I would compare it to like a network of computers that are networked together, and a virus gets in one of those computers, it can infect the entire network. But yet, if they're not connected and a virus gets into one, the other 20 computers are still operational, and you just have one down. That's kind of what we're trying to overcome, at least operationally speaking. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of,
Right. So kind of, if you all form up in one coalition or something, then it would make it a bigger target, basically, for the globalists.
Exactly. Yes, among other things, but yes, you're very perceptive, yes. But we still haven't discounted it, and certainly we are there are things that we are doing behind the scenes that among like-minded hosts that we don't talk about. So just to let you know that. So, I mean, things are going forward, but not necessarily openly.
Right. Well, maybe we can talk some behind the scenes, but in the meantime, along with what you guys were saying with the Cyprus situation, I was wondering, you know how they were talking about, you said expansion to France, Italy, and Spain later on if things continue to get worse. One point I haven't heard any other investigative journalists bring up is how does this tie into what Jim Tucker said a couple months ago about the Bilderberg situation? And I know InfoWars, was saying that, I think Paul Watson was the one that said they're going to be booked up, through June at the 22nd through the 24th. And I don't know if that was maybe too early of a leak but yeah, I haven't heard anyone correlate that with exactly what's happening with the EU meltdown with the banks. And I thought that was just a very strong connection. That was my first thought a couple weeks ago when we heard about the Cyprus situation was, okay, this ties in exactly with, what Jim Tucker was saying a couple months back about, Bilderberg coming back to the Westfield Marriott in Chantilly, Virginia again. And as someone who attended that protest, yeah, I thought that was a huge point that I haven't heard Alex Jones or anyone else break down yet. So I didn't know if you guys gave that any thought or what your opinion was on that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because this is something that we have not talked about because we're doing some things to, we've got some plans with respect to that, okay, in terms of surveillance, monitoring what takes place, but we feel that it has everything to do with what's taking place in Cyprus. And you watch after this meeting the direction of the monetary system globally, because they're going to walk out of, among other things, they're going to walk out of that meeting, the leaders of industry, the captains of industry, the political leaders, they're going to walk out of there with solutions already to problems that we have not even seen. So, yes, this is indeed something that you're very perceptive, my friend, very perceptive. And I want to thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, sir. And another thing, this kind of came to me. I don't know if you could call it God or what else, but it almost would make you stronger if you had a network of patriots because what I heard, George Norrie and Alex Jones breaking down a couple weeks ago on the Wednesday show, they re-aired on Sunday, was that they're to the level now that they need man-on-the-ground, middlemen, so to speak, lower on the totem pole type of people. That way they can network and have those people as little messengers to go and get all the info from the lower and upper class and the middle class, and then they can come and give them that perspective because just like you guys, there's only so many hours in the day that you guys can dedicate to research and talking to people, and I'm really good at networking. I'm not afraid to talk to anyone, so I wear the Alex Jones shirts. 9/11 was an inside job, and it's like you said with the perception. People have been coming up to me, and I thought they would be angry, but typically it's Iranians or Albanians or people from overseas who are like, my people didn't do that, and they break it down, and we just sit there and talk about it, and really I've seen those shirts be a big messenger, just kind of like a red flag to people, and you probably get some dirty looks, especially being in a red state or a blue state. But at the same time, I feel like you get those people into thinking, outside the box and maybe breaks through the mainstream narrative. So I didn't know if you guys had anything to say about that. But what I was just saying is that, maybe it would be good to have, it would give you security almost and safety in a sense because you would have so many people. It would be harder to take down the whole network if there was, maybe 10 hosts for, 24-hour station or whatnot. But, I know that you guys have a great platform, and like you say, combining with other hosts and their platforms, I mean, this could really get going somewhere, so.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, we should, and I apologize for not responding back to your initial email. There is information sharing that's been developed, a method of information sharing. That there's a network behind the scenes, and that's all I'll say about that, But with what you're saying, the duplication of time and effort is extremely important, and we are attempting to formulate something with another agency, shall we say, or another non-governmental group, another patriot group, if you will, to assist us in doing that. So everything you're saying, we appreciate, yes, we understand. That duplicate, but very specifically, what you were saying, the duplication of time by people such as yourself as, well, I'll use a phrase, FBI phrase, operational assets, where the research can be done and the actual the photographing, the documentation can be done. Yes, we are looking for people like that, which would be separate from the networking of the radio shows. But the information would be shared among the shows because that information needs to get out. We don't have any. And I'm saying this to everyone too. We have no designs on and no cares of, hey, we said it here first. No, it's not that way. The information that saves people or saves lives, or better yet, throws a monkey wrench into the plans of the globalists because of efforts like you, sir. This is what we need to really hone in on as well. And, boy, because I have not responded to your email yet, you can see we are indeed in need of that assistance. So with that, you can expect to be hearing from me here in the not too distant future, because there are some issues, including something you mentioned there, that we might need some assistance on.
Yes, sir. And like I said, I'd love to help. I don't want to give away my exact 10 points, even though the government already knows. But I am in the volunteer state. So with that being said, I've been in the South my whole life. Sorry about the nasally voice tonight, guys. I'm a little bit under the weather. But, yeah, man, like I said, I just talked to so many Patriots, and I feel like God's been bringing them to me because I've met, black football players, college athletes. I've met so many people lately, vets, police, everything, military, and everyone's saying the same thing. So, and it's funny because they don't even know the same sources like Alex+Jones and you guys and, other different freedom fighters, so to speak, but we all have the same inclinations and we all have the same message. And, yeah, if we can just figure out a way to broadcast that. Obviously, I don't have as big a mouthpiece as you guys do, but if, like you said, if I could feed you guys some stories under the table or anything like that, just to promote, your organization and overall liberty in general. So that would be awesome, man.
All right, my brother. And you do have as big a mouthpiece, of course, because you're talking now, and you're talking to everyone, basically everyone listening to this show on the planet. So,
man, thanks for all that you do, and hopefully we can work together and get some more people on board and wake up some more people to what's really going on.
Yeah, and you know what, caller, this brings me to another point. We're going to have we're looking to have some quality, with emphasis on quality, U.S.-made Hagmann and Hagmann Report gear. Now, I know that sounds like really, well, like, so what? Well, you know what? A lot of times, like you said, like the T-shirts, messages on shirts or whatever, it's something where just because you don't know, somebody who would look at a shirt like that and say, well, what's that all about? And I'm not going to say 9/11 is an inside job, but, for example, something different, and I can't think of a phrase right now, but something to get other people thinking, bumper sticker, coffee mug, whatever it might be. All of these.
Yeah, exactly. Those are just great conversation starters for sure. Break the awkward silence at first and everything. So.
Exactly. My friend, thank you so very much for your call. God bless you, and I will be in touch. We will be in touch, both Joe and I.
Sounds good, guys. Good night.
All right. Take care now.
Have a great night.
You too.
Man, time is just flying. We only got a couple minutes left. We're going to go to area code 708 next. You're live on the Hagmann Report.
Good evening, gentlemen. You had some very interesting callers tonight and everything else like that. And I got to tell you, I caught the last couple of your shows when you had Steve Quayle and Henry Gruver, Steve Quayle and his Inside Guy V. My goodness, unbelievable shows. And Steve Quayle was recently on an RBN network with Dave Hodges on Sunday night before he showed up on your show Tuesday. Oh, that was a very good show too.
And Steve never told me a thing about it. I had to find out from someone else. So, I mean, yeah, he is astounding what the information he's got.
Something else too is the night you had Greg Abenson and Steve Quayle on, they asked for a request for Marcus Samuel out in Porcupine, South Dakota, with the Indian reservation.
Yes, I
Remember
talked
that?
to Marcus. Yes, I do, and I talked to Marcus at length on the phone yesterday, and he gave me permission to put his name and mailing address on our website for any type of assistance that anyone can provide. I got to tell you, caller, he is really fighting the battle. You talk about a true missionary in North America. That guy's a real deal.
Well, he's got me almost convinced. I know Greg was mentioning he's going to be going down there in the spring and everything to help out. And I'll tell you what, I'm out of work over here in Chicago, and I'm almost tempted to jump in and drive out there and see if he could use some help. And I've sent him, I got my tax return, so I sent him some money. He sent me a nice letter. I sent him some more money, and then he sent me something about saying prayers. And I couldn't think of what to put down because I'm not asking for anything for myself. But then I thought about it, and I said, hey, could you say a prayer for my family? Because I think the only thing that's going to help them is family and friends, and that's a baseball bat across the head for them to wake up. And by then it's going to be way too late. So I just sent that out today with another check. But I mean,
God bless you.
This is how bad this is. I mean, where people cannot see. It's like they're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, and nothing's going to affect them. And this thing with Cyprus, I mean, this is just amazing. And then I heard Ben Bernanke last week say what happened in Cyprus is not totally off the table for here in America, meaning as if they have control of this.
Doesn't that just give you the warm fuzzies? Doesn't that make you just want to keep your money in the bank? I mean, holy cow! For Bernanke to say that, I mean, if that doesn't wake up, I don't know if you've got an iPad or a phone or some sort of device where you can just record that 1 minute exchange and show it to your family, show it to your friends who are doubting, instead of a baseball bat to the head, please. Because wouldn't that wake people up? I mean, that really got my wife thinking, and my wife never listens to me. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but we have people who say, "Oh, come on, it can't happen here," and yet
that's exactly what they're saying. That's exactly what everybody's saying. Oh, this is America. It can't happen here. It can't happen here. That's because they've never experienced it happening here. The last time it happened here was 1929. I wasn't alive. My mother was alive. She was 5 years old, and she doesn't remember that much about it.
Well, you know what, caller? I'm afraid we're going to find out in the short term. When I say short term, I don't know if it's going to be next month or next week or next year. I can't see us going past a year.
Well, I'm sure your inside guys said something to you about possibly by Memorial Day weekend.
Here's what he said, and folks, listen carefully to this. Don't forget the globalists, this Luciferian agenda, their new year is actually April 1st. Always in April, they celebrate, and I shouldn't say always, there's usually a blood sacrifice of sorts. Now, that is not limited to just blood sacrifice in terms of bodies, but also collateral damage by some economic disaster. So April is going to be a dicey month, as well as October. So we could see a shot across the bow during April and some sort of event by October. Is that written in stone? No. But is it possible? Absolutely. And with that, watch what's going on in the Middle East at the same time, because the attempt there is to coordinate the various agendas. Because, one crisis is good, 2 is better, 3 is great, and 4 is just, 4 crises at the same time. Oh boy. Look for that exacerbation of our current people. Did I answer your question, caller, or did I address that?
No, you did, and I thank you very much, and I know your show is closing out, and hopefully you get another caller in. I just want to say, God bless you both. I consider you both my brothers in Christ, and God bless everybody who's listening, and I hope they can wake somebody up. If you can just touch one person, I think that would be great. So God bless you guys. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you, and I hope you can touch someone and change someone's mind yourself. If we can all, listening to this program, all just change one person, how great would that be? Folks, let me close this out by saying, what have you done today to take that one step toward preparation? Joe?
God bless each and every one of you. You have a wonderful night, and God willing, we'll see you here tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.